Alright, my name is Brandon and I'm with BMJ Media. I'm going to be showing you guys how I got from this raw photo to this Instagram ready photo. This is my first ever tutorial on any platform, so if you enjoy this content, please give it a like, subscribe, and we'll just jump right into it. So I'm in Lightroom, and the first thing that I would do if I was going to export this for Instagram would be to crop it to a 4:5 ratio. And this gives you the best size for your profile. So when somebody goes to your profile and they see all of the photos all together, now in 2025, they are in 4:5 crop instead of just a square. Second thing I would do is jump into the light area and make sure that everything is okay. You don't want any clipping going on. And speaking of clipping, if you right click on your histogram and say show clipping in photo, you can see where areas are overexposed and underexposed, and I'll show you that just now. Yeah, so if your photo was overexposed in any way, you'd see some red. Obviously, that's terrible. And then if it was underexposed, you would see some blue areas. Maybe you'd see a couple of blue areas. I hope it's not like this. But yeah, if you see any red or blue areas, just try to adjust for that. A little tip, you can also hold shift and click any of these for like auto exposure, contrast, whatever you need. And I mean, that did pretty good. Yeah, kind of like this. It's actually doing what I was gonna do anyway, and drop highlights for this white paint, and then bring up shadows to bring some detail back in the car. And then I would move on down to the curve section here and make some points like this. And then do a slight S curve, kind of like that. I don't want to overdo it because I got a lot of bright areas up there. And then sometimes I like to add a point in between here, maybe on the higher end, right there. Try not to move it. And then I bring this back up just slightly so that I introduce some like fade in the darkest areas of the photo. I'll do that again so you can kind of see it. It's more prevalent down here at the Jeep. Yeah, so just a little bit. I like how that looks. So we'll stick with that. And then moving down to the color section, if your histogram up here is all out of whack, which means your white balance is kind of out of whack, you want to bring these peaks together, kind of how they are here. I'll show you what you don't want. You don't want these peaks to be out of alignment in either direction. Maybe it's what you're going for. All depends. I mean, rules are meant to be broken, but kind of keep those together. And then I always like to add some vibrance and then reduce saturation. I don't know why I do it this way instead of the other way, or even if this is counterintuitive. It's kind of cancel each other out. I don't know, but I think it looks nice. Maybe it's a placebo effect. Who knows? And then I usually go into my oranges and yellows and kind of make it more orange. So saturate that. I'm kind of saturating for the brick here. So like that. And then for the yellows, I'll kind of increase the saturation there, but also bring it into more orangey areas. And then for the most part, you're probably shooting outside, so you'll probably have some blue that is on the car. And if it's not a blue car, maybe you don't want it there. So I'm going to desaturate my blues a little bit, which also helps bring more attention to the car instead of all the bright blue areas in the windows. And I'll probably do it for this like teal looking color as well, because I can see that in the windows too. Cool, yeah, I like that. And then I like to bring up some luminance for the blue areas, because that's where the sky was hitting the car. And I kind of like to just bring out the light. Cool, like it. And then onto the color grading section, you can mess with shadows, midtones, and then highlights, or even global. But I like to stick to just the shadows being blue, and then the highlights being like a orange. And this is a complementary color, so kind of want to stick it to the opposite ends if you want to go for complementary colors. So I'm making the shadows a little bit blue, but not too much. And then for the highlights, I like to add a little saturation just to make it look a little bit more sunny out instead of just grayscale up there. That's probably pretty good. And then I usually move down to the textures, like the effects here, and bring down the texture and clarity of the entire image. Kind of gives it the dreamy look that I'm going for. And then just a little bit of a added dehaze to knock it back slightly. And then I always do a little bit of sharpening after that as well. And go to the optics and check off these two checkboxes. What this will do is get rid of the chromatic aberration, and then if I turn this off, I had some distortion that it fixed for me, and then some vignetting that it fixed for me as well. So yeah, just go in here, choose your camera, make and model of your make of your camera, and then model of your lens. And yeah, just hit that box and you should be good. I don't really mess with the lens blur or anything like that. Just do that all on camera. Cool. And then I think we're good to move on to masks. And I think this is kind of where your creativity comes out. I find that when I introduce masking to any of my photos, it changes pretty dramatically. So I'm going to do a subject mask for my first one, and I always go ahead and clean it up with a brush subtraction. So just drop down this arrow, subtract, brush, and go ahead and scroll wheel to change the size of your brush and just get rid of all the areas that it either missed, or you can add some masking to your image where it missed as well by hitting this add in the brush. And then let's say you make a mistake, you could always bring it back by holding Alt and then brushing it back in. Hopefully you didn't make a mistake that bad, but yeah, okay. So moving on, I like to add a radial gradient or even a linear gradient, but for this case I'm going to do radial to my sky, where my light source would be coming from. And then I kind of move it a little bit into the car so that I'll have some masking behind the car when I do this. So subtract subject, and now it's subtracted to your car. And I'm going to clean it up by doing another subtraction of the brush tool. Okay, I think that's good. Also subtract this foreground element. Cool. All right, I think that's good. And then yeah, for this mask, I'm going to increase the shadows and the black slider, which hopefully should separate the background a little bit more from the car by decreasing the contrast of the background here. Speaking of which, I might decrease the contrast actually. Yeah, and then if I turn this off, you'll see the before and after. Just separates the car, helps it pop out a little bit more. And then I'll kind of do like an opposite effect where do a gradient for the street. And then getting repetitive here, do a subject subtraction, and then a subject or a brush subtraction, clean it up. And I'll also get rid of this foreground element as well. I'm gonna leave a little bit of overlap. I'll show you why in a second. But drop the exposure on the street. And this should add, this should help you bring the viewer's eye to the car, because all this is darker and the eyes are more drawn to the more contrasty area. So the contrast between this black car and the bright street really helps out. If I did get rid of all that mask here, you'll see that kind of screws up the street, so I didn't want to do that. I could probably refine this a little farther, but all right. Actually, no, I will. Okay, that's probably fine. All right, cool. And then I'll add some texture and clarity to this street mask. I still want the detail to pop out of the bumper as well, so I'm going to add another mask for the brush. So I'm adding a brush mask. brushing onto the bumper where all the dark areas are, and then increasing the shadow slider like that, and that should be pretty good. Going back to this mask, I'm gonna decrease the highlights slightly. Thought it was too much. Okay. So I think that is pretty good for what we want to do in Lightroom. I'll do a before and after here. So this is the original. This is afterwards. As you can see, the car pops out a little bit more. Let me actually add one more mask. This one's kind of fun. So do a radial gradient. And then I'm going to do this for the floor where the light is hitting. And then subtract subject, subtract brush, clean it up. Also clean up unwanted areas. Okay, I think so. What's going to happen here is I'm going to increase the exposure of the ground ever so slightly, but to make it more realistic looking, I'm also going to subtract here. And the reason why is because my light source is probably casting a shadow, quote unquote, over here because it's coming from the top left. So it's going to hit the car, cast a shadow, and then not produce any light right there. So increase that slightly. Kind of tell it's a little bit more realistic that way. And then you can always fine tune this. So I'm still on the subtraction brush. Right? I think so. Yeah. So I'm just going to refine this a little bit. Subtract like under the car a little bit more. Keep the shadows going. Okay. Kind of being nitpicky, but that's where we're at. Still going to continue to drop this exposure up here. Don't like it being so bright. All right, I think that is okay. Again, before, after, before, after. And then, so once I'm done in Lightroom, I'll go ahead and go to File, or Edit in Photoshop. And then I'll pop up with this, just saying like, make sure you save your photo before exiting Photoshop. Just hit OK. Okay, so now that we're in Photoshop, I'm gonna zoom in. And what I want to do in Photoshop is get rid of any distractions that are taking away from the image and just the overall viewer's attention to the car. So I think like this red tint, this little orange worm thing in the window, and then of course this lady is kind of distracting. So I'm gonna hit L on my keyboard, and that should pop up polygonal lasso tool. If it's on lasso tool, you can also use that too. But if it's not, just hover over this, hold down on your left click, and then go to polygonal. You can also use a pen tool, but I just like this polygonal. So select around any areas that you don't want. I'm just being pretty loose for this tutorial, but be as tight to your subjects that you want to be. Trying not to cut into the car. Okay, and then with Photoshop's generative fill tool, I'm gonna hit generate or generative fill, and then you can hit generate right now or type remove or whatever. I just hit generate because it just removes. Cool. All right, so that did a good job. Not really worried about how any of this looks back here because it's all kind of chaotic anyway. Nobody's gonna ever notice, except for you guys. All right, and that should be that. This is a before and after of taking out distracting subjects. And then if you want to go a step farther into like the dreamy look, we can go ahead and merge these two. Merge layers. and then drag this down to create new layer. And then with your background copy selected, change this to lighten, and then go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then set it to 20 or anything that you feel works for your photo. Mine's always pretty much at 20. And then drop this to 40% opacity. And then this should introduce like a glow effect, but I also want to take it a step further and add a curve, and then do a clipping, create clipping mask, and then do the same 3 points that we did before in Lightroom, and then just drop the blacks a little bit. This should take all that like bloom effect out of the blacker areas, and then you can increase the white if you want. For mine, I just want to do it slightly. Cool. Yeah, just to reiterate, I'm gonna zoom in. So it was kind of like this, where it was kind of washing out the dark areas. So I wanted to just take it back a little bit, get rid of it. So I think that's good. All you need to do after that is just hit the X mark, hit yes to the save changes to Adobe Photoshop document. Okay, so when you're back in Lightroom, it should already have populated with your new image without any distractions. So as you can see, I don't have that lady in there anymore. So just to go from our raw file down to what we edited, here's the before, here's the Lightroom edit, and then jumping into what Photoshop produced, just getting rid of distractions. And yeah, there you have it. When you're ready for exporting, just go to File, Export. These are the settings that I use and have been working for me for about 2 years or so. I do alongside 4,000 pixels. You can probably get away with less. I'm sure you can get away with less, honestly, actually, like 2,500. I set it to 4,000 because if I send it to clients, I want it to be, you know, really, really nice and sharp for them and high quality. But if you want to export for clients, you can do 4,000 and then do another export for web and Instagram for like 2,500 pixels. That would probably be okay. And then most of the time I use a watermark. So this is my watermark down here. You just put a PNG down here, and I like to put it at the bottom. My size is usually 6. For horizontal photos, I usually do 4. And then opacity set to 80 because I don't want it to be too bright down there. And then go ahead and give it a custom name, whatever you want. In this case, I'd probably do like their Instagram. Let's see, and then output sharpening set to screen, mount standard, and then color space sRGB for just web in general. Cool, yeah, that was pretty much it. If you guys learned anything, definitely give it a like and subscribe. If you didn't, go ahead and give a dislike. It's all good. I get it. In the comment section, definitely give any suggestions for what you want to see next. I'm going to be doing a lot more of this car editing stuff, maybe some behind the scenes, who knows. Pretty much at this point, this YouTube channel can go pretty much anywhere. I'm going to keep it in the car realm though. But yeah, appreciate you watching. Thanks.